Hello there, and welcome to episode 2 of Baseball Ramble. Today's Friday, January 17th, and today we're going to be getting into, obviously the firings of Alex Cora and Carlos Beltran, plus Josh Donaldson, the biggest free agent left on the market, signing with the Minnesota Twins, getting into that Cardinals-Rays trade that I forgot to talk about in the last podcast because of how long it ended up being, and some other rumors regarding Kris Bryant, Corey Seager, and getting more into the Astros managerial search as well after AJ Hinch being dismissed. So firstly off today, we're going to talk about, in my opinion, what is the biggest news. It's not the firings, but third baseman Josh Donaldson signed the biggest free agent signing in Minnesota Twins history. He has been guaranteed to a 4-year, $92 million contract, and that contract includes a 5th-year option that can increase the deal to be worth 5 years, $100 million. Now, when I say biggest free agent signing, it's not the biggest signing they've ever given out. They extended Joe Mauer to an 8-year, $184 million extension back in the days. But this is their biggest free agent signing ever. So Josh Donaldson, I predicted in the last podcast at the very beginning that he would sign to about 4 years, $100 million with the Atlanta Braves. And then midway through, he signed with the Minnesota Twins, which was pretty, typical. But Donaldson had a really underrated year, in my opinion. I think he was a borderline top 10 player in the National League in 2018-19. He put up just great numbers. He hit .259 with a .379 on-base percentage and a .521 slugging percentage, which adds up to a .900 OPS. He had a .132 WRC+, which means he was 32% above league average in that statistic. And he had a .377 weighted on-base average, and his expected weighted on-base average was even bigger with a .387, meaning he could have been even better. And he also hit 37 home runs, 94 RBIs, so a lot of production there in the Atlanta third base hole. And he had a 4.9 WAR. And when you think of Donaldson, you think of back in his MVP days, you think of his offense, but he was a great defensive player too. He had a 15 defensive runs saved and 2.4 ultimate zone rating, which DRS just measures how good you are defensively in general, and ultimate zone rating kind of decides how good you're. It's more about range, and that is what factors into WAR. DRS does not actually factor into WAR, so if DRS did, his WAR would be even higher. But yeah, Donaldson had a really great, an amazing bounce back year with the Atlanta Braves. He bet on himself. He said, I'm not going to take, because in 2017 he was great, but he missed maybe a little less than half the year. And then in 2018, he only played a month with the Cleveland Indians. And he could have signed. He could have gone out there and taken the easy way out. He could have signed a 2-year, $20 million deal with maybe or a 2-year, $30 million would probably be more realistic. Maybe a 2-year, $30 million deal with a $15 million player option for a third year. But instead, he went to the Atlanta Braves, the team he rooted for as a kid, and he signed there for a 1 year and $20 million. And now he's going to end up making, you got to assume that when he's 38 years old, he's going to take that $16 million player option. So he's going to probably end up making about 6 years, $120 million. Which I think he's definitely going to end up being happy with that. And this makes the Twins lineup so good. For the Twins, you have Mitch Garver, who's probably the most underrated catcher in baseball. I mean, he had just a monster season with the Minnesota Twins. He's a guy I admit I had never even heard of him before this year, and he hit like 36 home runs, something like that, and not even like 110 games, I think. Just crazy. And then at first base, I assume they're going to be moving over Miguel Sano to first base, and he's just a huge power hitter. At second base, when he's starting, you got rookie Luis Arias, who a lot of people haven't heard of, but he's a really underrated guy who can hit above league average offense. Plus, he can play all over the infield and outfield. He's a super utility player. Then at shortstop, Jorge Polanco, kind of more a contact-based guy, but he can still hit you 20 home runs and give you a 15% above league average offense. And then you got Josh Donaldson at third, and when you look at the outfield, you got Eddie Rosario, Max Kepler, and Byron Buxton. Max Kepler has a ginormous ceiling with great defense and offense this year. Byron Buxton still, I would say he has the highest ceiling on the team. He was the number one prospect in baseball for 2 straight years. He hasn't broken out yet. And then you got Eddie Rosario, who's really not that great of an all-around player. He's good, but not great. But he can hit pretty well. And then you got the ageless wonder Nelson Cruz out there in DH, who's aging like a fine wine, I guess you could say. He went out there. He didn't even play. He probably played 2/3 of the season and still hit over 40 home runs as like a 41-year-old. That's just unheard of. It's going to be fun to see if he can play a whole year this year and see what he can do as this old guy out on that underrated Minnesota Twins team. So what do I think about the AL Central now? Because I think most of the AL Central movement is done. I don't see any of those White Sox, Indians, Twins. I don't see those guys. None of them are obviously going to trade for a Nolan Arenado, Kris Bryant, Mookie Betts, Francisco Lindor type. Francisco Lindor's already on the Indians. And then none of them are going to go out and sign Ozuna or Castellanos. I think the biggest move that could possibly happen for the AL Central is Yasiel Puig going back to Cleveland. Or maybe even signing with the White Sox. But I think this kind of... when I'll do probably predictions later in the year, but I'm assuming that I'm going to have the Twins number 1 because their lineup of Garver, Sano, Arias, and then you can't forget about Marwin Gonzalez, who kind of had a down year this year, but he used to be a super utility guy for the Astros as well. We'll get into them later, but again, Arias, Polanco, Donaldson, Rosario, Buxton, Kepler, Cruz. Wow, that lineup, they broke the home run record for a reason this year, and they won't break it again because I do think the ball might go. Home runs will be a little lower this year, but it's going to be a great lineup, and I think this Twins team is just one starter away from being at the same level as they were last season because I think there's going to be quite a bit of regression there, though I still expect them to be roughly a 90 to 95 win team. So that is on the Donaldson signing. I like it a lot. I think it's a really just a great move. You can get worried about that possibly 5-year length that kind of turns into an albatross. That would last into his age 38 season, which isn't great. But I do think Donaldson will produce enough in at least the first 2 years of this deal. As long as he's defending, because I'm confident he's going to stay an offensive beast. But as long as he just doesn't become an awful third baseman, I think this deal's definitely going to be worth it. Now, let's get into the cheating scandal. I'm not sure there's ever going to be a point, since I guess I should have mentioned this earlier, but I am planning on uploading a podcast every Tuesday and Friday, so twice a week. But there's enough days in between every time I do a podcast. There's just going to be so much news on this cheating scandal. Every time I'm going to have to talk about it a lot. Every time. But as you may have heard, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably know the news. And it happened right in the middle of my episode 1. But Alex Cora, the Red Sox manager, 2018, the guy who led the Red Sox to the 2018 World Series championship, has been fired. reports were saying he was gonna they were gonna wait until the MLB's investigation was over. But I think what I personally think happened is they kind of realized that investigation might not even end until spring training, and that would be a huge distraction to have to dismiss your manager in the middle of spring training. And I don't think they wanted to do that, so I think they just said, we need a new manager. We got to send you out. And I actually don't know who their bench coach is, honestly. I'm going to be straight with you there. I have no idea who their bench coach is. But Alex Cora, I think he definitely deserved this. I think he's going to get a pretty harsh punishment here. I don't know if it's going to be like a 2 or 3 year ban, or at this point, the way the report's making it sound, he was kind of the mastermind of this whole thing. Is it possible? I talked about this possibility in the last episode. Will he get a lifetime ban? I don't think so. That's pretty extreme, but you never know. And then also earlier on Thursday, Carlos Beltran and the Mets mutually agreed to part ways. Obviously, that's just a fancy, nice way to say he's fired. But Carlos Beltran is not going to even manage one spring training game with the Mets. It'll be interesting to see who they go with there. I expect they're going to go with who their number 2 choice was during when they were hiring their manager, Eduardo Perez, who is currently an analyst on ESPN. I'm not the biggest fan of his work on ESPN. I think he seems like he's really old school, honestly, based on how he talks on ESPN games. But you never know. He could be a great manager, and there's still old school managers out there who succeed. So we'll see with that. But Carlos Beltran, him getting fired just shows how you would have never expected when we saw the report that Mike Fiers told The Athletic that the Astros cheated. You'd have never expected that Jeff Luna was going to get fired. AJ Hinch was going to get fired. Alex Cora was going to get fired. Carlos Beltran was going to get fired. The Astros were going to lose draft picks. The Astros were going to lose $5 million. Like, all this stuff, no one would have imagined that this was going to have this big of an impact. So I don't want to talk about the cheating too much, because I'll talk to that later when I do. I'm actually going to rank out of the 6 main kind of components of this Astros cheating scandal. I'm going to rank who I blame the most later. I'm calling it 6 keys to the Astros scandal. I'm ranking them. Who gets the most blame. But we're gonna talk about the Astros managerial search. No one would have expected we're talking about a managerial search in the middle of January, but we're gonna have 3 here. So the Astros have officially interviewed former Blue Jays manager John Gibbons and he's managed the Yankees, Diamondbacks, Rangers, and most famously the Orioles. And he's also a 3-time manager of the year. So, but I don't think they'd go with Buck Showalter here just because of how old school he was. I mean, if you're too old school for the Orioles, I highly doubt you're gonna get hired by the Astros. But they're also rumored candidates. Dusty Baker, former Giants, Cubs, Reds, and Nationals manager, 3-time manager of the year, won the 2002 pennant. I'm surprised he's even part of this either, because again, he was fired he wasn't fired, but he wasn't re-signed because he just is an old school guy. An interesting guy here is Jeff Bannister, former Rangers manager. I don't really remember that much about him, but I believe he was not fired. Like, out of all the guys who were fired, who are not like managers anymore, John Gibbons, Buck Showalter, Dusty Baker, Jeff Bannister, I don't think he was fired because of, he wasn't old school. I think he just wasn't getting results for the Rangers after their successful playoff run there in the mid-2010s. I think they just wanted better results. So, yeah, if I had to pick someone here, I'd pick none of them. I also didn't mention they're also thinking about Raul Ibanez and Will Venable, who are both former Major League outfielders. I didn't ever watch I kind of remember Will Venable a little, but I never got to see Raul Ibanez play, so I don't know much about him. But out of all these 6 choices that have been listed, I wouldn't hire any of them. I think you got the best guy for the job in the building already. It's Joe Espada, in my opinion. Now, they might be a little, I don't know, paranoid to let a guy who's already in their organization do it, just because, AJ Hinch and Jeff Lunau, well, not really Jeff Lunau, but AJ Hinch, I guess, couldn't be trusted to keep the cheating under control. So my only thought as to why they're interviewing all these old school guys is to come in here and be like, okay, you guys are cheaters. You realize that. Do you realize how wrong that is? Back in the day, we couldn't cheat. We just had to play baseball, and that's what I'm going to teach you to do here, because you guys are probably so reliant on this cheating crap that I'm going to teach you the right way to do it. So if I had to predict a guy out of these, I guess I could see John Gibbons getting the job, or Dusty. I think it'll either be John Gibbons or Dusty Baker. I really don't think it's going to be Buck Showalter, because I think he's I don't think he's just old school. I think he's anti-new school. I think John Gibbons and Dusty Baker would at least not mind, They wouldn't mind the analytics. So, now I am going to rank the 6 keys to the Astros scandal. The ranking here is who is most to blame. So, number 6, least to blame out of the most key components here, is owner Jim Crane. You gotta feel bad for this guy, because according to the MLB report, this dude had absolutely no idea what was going on. He had no idea when he saw the report in The Athletic of Mike Fiers saying they cheated. He had no idea what the crap he was talking about. And Rob Manfred described Jim Crane when he interviewed him for the investigation as just visibly upset and troubled that this would happen under his watch. And when you watch the press conference of him announcing the firings of Jeff Lunau and AJ Hinch, you could tell he was not he wasn't okay with this. He really just hated the fact he had to do this. So Jim Crane is obviously the least to blame. Number 5, this is going to not go well with a lot of people. Jeff Lunau. Astros general manager Jeff Lunau is number 5. Because the report describes he also had no idea that this was going on. That's just crazy to me. But the MLB said, you're the general manager of this team. You have to be held accountable for what's happening. And that's why he got suspended and ultimately fired. Just because he let this happen under his nose, I guess. Number 4, this is kind of ironic because these are the 2 guys who are probably the biggest names related to the scandal. Manager AJ Hinch. The report described him as he disapproved of this cheating method. And he even went as far to not get rid of just one, but got rid of 2 of the monitors the Astros players were using to cheat. And I do blame Hinch. I'm not saying Hinch is not at fault, because I don't comprehend the fact that he didn't let his boss Jeff Lunau and even bigger boss Jim Crane. How did he not tell them what was going on? And also, he apparently didn't voice his approval to the players. Why are you, especially after the Red Sox were caught with the Apple Watch scandal, and Rob Manfred came out and said, hey, we're done with this. We're not doing this anymore. Why would you not act on that? That is his downfall. Lack of communication is what killed AJ Hinch. And that's why I think he's going to get a job. I think he's going to get a job because he's obviously smart. He's an amazing baseball. He's an amazing baseball mind. But just lack of communication. And it's really disappointing because I like AJ Hinch. And I think he's getting unnecessary hate and people are calling him a cheater when he's not really a cheater. He's just someone who accepted the cheaters. Number 3 on this list is Carlos Beltran. the leader, who he was described as the ringleader of, the cheating. The guy who kind of said, yeah, guys, this is a great idea. Let's do this. As a veteran, as a guy who has been in this game, played for a lot of different teams, possibly, I'm a borderline Hall of Famer. Let's do this. Honestly, if they aren't going to let Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens and all these guys in for the Hall of Fame, they absolutely cannot let Carlos Beltran in. Now, I haven't really looked at the stats and seen if he was a Hall of Famer yet, but even if he is, I'd probably vote for him. But I better not see a ballot in the next 3 years that doesn't include Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens, but includes Carlos Beltran. Because he is in my opinion, he's a worse cheater. He was a worse cheater. Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens just enhanced themselves. Carlos Beltran cheated for an entire team. Number 2, the Houston Astros players. The report described this as not a front office scheme. Everyone assumed when this report came out, with how analytics based and smart and trying to find shortcuts the Astros front office is, everyone assumed, man, these guys developed a scheme with the camera and the monitors. Man, these guys are smart cheaters. But the report described this as a player-run system. The players did this to themselves. And that is why I heavily disagree with the fact that no players are getting punished. Because if the report said this was AJ Hinch and Jeff Lunau and those guys' ideas, I'd be like, man, they forced this upon the players. They can't do this. But the players are the people who kept this going. How? When you have Jose Altuve, who's a great personality and a great guy, how does he not question this? When you have George Springer, who's described as the same way, how does he not question this? You have Justin Verlander, who's a veteran, a future Hall of Famer. How does he not question this? When you have Carlos Beltran, also possibly a borderline Hall of Famer, how does he not question this? It's ridiculous and it's embarrassing. And this is why the Astros punishment was not enough. No, they can't strip the title. No, they can't be giving out lifetime bans to Jeff Lunau and AJ Hinch. But the players need to be at least fined. But these guys are rich. Even the ones who make less money than everyone else, they're still making $600,000 a year. They are rich. Fines aren't going to hurt them that much. These players should absolutely be suspended. I don't even know how long. I really do think it should be at least a month suspension. The Astros has to bring in basically their AAA team. And I think that would be great punishment. But man, the players did this to themselves, except for number 1. And this one's probably extremely obvious. Alex Cora is the most to blame. Yes, the players ran it, but they didn't create it. The guy who created it was Alex Cora. The guy who spread it to an entirely different organization was Alex Cora. Alex Cora did so much bad here. He should never be a major league manager, major league coach, baseball manager, baseball coach. He should never be involved in baseball again. And I'm not saying he should be lifetime banned, but a team should never hire this dude because he is the mastermind. You wouldn't expect it because he seems like a great guy, but he obviously has costed people millions of dollars. He's costed people their jobs. He's costed... Again, this guy has costed 3 people their jobs. AJ Hinch, Carlos Beltran, and himself. He should never manage a baseball game again. And that is it for the cheating today. We're now going to get into a trade that happened that I was planning on talking about in the last episode, but did not. The Cardinals will acquire Matthew Liberatore and low-level catching prospect Edgardo Rodriguez from the Rays for outfielder Jose Martinez and outfield prospect Randy Arozarena. So let's look at both sides of this deal, and I'll give my opinion on it. As a Cardinals fan, I'll probably be a little more passionate than I would be if this was just any other team. So let's look at what the Rays got. So the Rays traded away Matthew Liberatore, who's, I believe, the number 41 prospect in the entire game of baseball. He now ranks as the Cardinals' number 3 prospect, only behind Dylan Carlson and Nolan Gorman. So Jose Martinez, everyone knows the story about Jose Martinez. He has the potential to be probably like a 30% above league average bat. He is so good offensively. He has such good bat-to-ball skills, but he cannot defend for his life. He's terrible at he can't run routes. He actually has a pretty good arm, but he has bad arm accuracy. He can't he's really not that good at tracking down balls at all. I think that's his main problem. He can field balls just fine, I think, but I just don't think he can track them down at all. So he'll probably be the DH for the Rays. And then they also got outfield prospect Randy Arozarena, who now ranks as their number 12 prospect in the organization. And according to the scouting reports, in his prime, he's expected to be an everyday worthy outfielder. He's expected to be basically kind of an average hitter for an outfielder. So maybe in his prime, you might be seeing like 110 WRC plus or so. And he's pretty fast. He has a 55 grade on the 80 scale for base running. And I think he's an above average fielder as well. So I think he can be like a solid 3-WAR player in his prime. I think it's a solid ad for the Rays. But what I don't get is they're just so obsessed with money. Why didn't they, when they could have just not traded one of their top prospects, kept Matthew Liberatore, and kept Tommy Pham? Why do you have to trade Tommy Pham for Hunter Renfroe? I just don't understand. Usually I like the Rays off season, but this year I don't. I think they're going to regress. I think they'll probably still be a playoff team, and probably still be second place in the division after it, maybe based on what the Red Sox punishment will end up being. But I just think they would have been better off keeping Matthew Liberatore and keeping Tommy Pham instead of having to trade Matthew Liberatore and Tommy Pham for Hunter and for Jose Martinez, Randy Arozarena, get all these cheap costing dudes. I personally just don't understand. For the Cardinals, and the argument I've seen is, well, it was a need. Well, it was a self-created need. Why'd they trade Tommy Pham? He has the potential to be like a 4-WAR player every year. If he can just get right, he can be a really great player. As a Cardinals fan, I've seen him play. I just don't understand that. The Cardinals win this trade by a mile. I don't care what you say. Edgardo Rodriguez is kind of irrelevant in this trade. I'm not going to talk about him. Matthew Liberatore is the number 41 prospect in baseball, and he's the number 3 prospect in the Cardinals system. So I'm going to read up on his scouting report right here, according to MLB Pipeline. So, a 6'5" left-hander, Liberatore stands out for his combination of stuff and pitchability, with the makings of 3 pitches that could garner a 60 on the 20 to 80 scouting scale once fully developed. He sits in the low 90s and touches 95 miles per hour with a fastball that plays above its velocity because it's deceptive and gets such good extension over his front side. Liberatore's curveball is a swing and miss hammer thrown with 3/4 tilt and good spin rate, and he introduced a new and very effective slider during the spring. His diving changeup, meanwhile, is another promising pitch, one that plays nicely off his heater and could be his best secondary offering when all is said and done. So Matthew Liberatore is also childhood friends with number 2 Cardinals prospect. And let's see here, number 38 prospect in all of baseball, Nolan Gorman. And, that kind of makes me think they're not going to trade one of these guys for Nolan Arenado, because it's like, that's kind of cruel. But I don't think, and I don't end up thinking that would matter. So what the Cardinals did was they traded Jose Martinez and Randy Arozarena, and I talked about the Cardinals logjam in the outfield yesterday. They have Tyler O'Neill, Harrison Bader, Dylan Carlson, Lane Thomas, Tommy Edman, Dexter Fowler. All these guys, they're possibly going to re-sign Marcell Ozuna. They do not need Jose Martinez and Randy Arozarena one single bit. This is losing nothing, absolutely nothing, for a guy who not only is... This is what Matthew Liberatore is going to be. He's either going to be the top pitching prospect for the Cardinals organization, or he's going to produce a Nolan Arenado trade. It's a win-win from here on out. The Cardinals might have just traded Jose Martinez and Randy Arozarena for Nolan Gorman. But they also could have just traded Jose Martinez and Randy Arozarena for a pitcher with an extremely high ceiling, a top pitching prospect in baseball. Either way, I don't know how you look at it and don't award the Cardinals with this win. I don't see the way you say that. So that is that trade. Now we're going to get into some smaller moves. First off, the Giants released Zach Kozar. I don't understand this. I mean, I guess they have Evan Longoria and Brandon Crawford locking up that left side of the infield. But Zach Kozar has the potential to be at least average. He was pretty unlucky this year, and we've seen him play really well in the past. I don't understand this. I guess it was just to get the Will Wilson in that trade, who was a higher prospect than the guy they gave up. But someone's going to trade Zach Kozar for the minimum. The Giants are going to be paying it off, and they could potentially get a 3-WAR player out of just a minor league signing. I don't like this move for the Giants. Next up, you got the Angels trading for some pitching depth here. They they've not signed. They have traded for Diamondbacks relief pitcher Matt Andriese, who's a righty, for right-handed pitcher Jeremy Beasley, who now ranks as the number 27 prospect for the Diamondbacks. And just a little about Jeremy Beasley, he's mostly just expected to be kind of an average, your average major league pitcher. He could possibly bloom into a multi-inning reliever, but nothing special. But I do like this move for the Angels, because obviously, I've said multiple times, they haven't done enough this offseason. And when you look at Matt Andriese's stats, he actually was pretty unlucky. His 4.71 ERA isn't pretty at all, but when you look at his peripherals, for the advanced people out there, you got the 3.72 fielding independent pitching, you got the 3.88 X in fielding independent pitching, the 3.82 Sierra, which for those of you who don't know, those are basically just ERA predictors / indicators. And then for just the older, normal stats, he struck out 10 guys per 9 innings, which is always a good thing. He was a little not great with walks. He walked 3.44 guys per 9, but he really didn't give up very much home runs either. He basically just gave up a home run per 9 innings, which is below average. The average is 1.1 home run per 9 innings. So I think Matt Andriese could definitely be an above-average relief pitcher for the Angels, and he's also spot-started in the past. He didn't this season, but he has in the past. So if the Angels get their normal luck with maybe a Shohei Ohtani or Andrew Heaney or Dylan Bundy or any of those guys getting injured, Matt Andriese can definitely fill in for a few starts. You also have the Tigers signing starting pitcher Ivan Nova, veteran move there. I mean, this isn't really that important. It's a 1-year, $1.5 million deal. It's just to bring in arms. Nova wasn't good at all last season. He had a 4.72 ERA, 4.98 FIP, 4.91 xFIP, 5.16 Sierra. He only struck out 5.5 guys per 9 innings, and he gave up 1.44 home runs per 9 innings. And he somehow pitched 187 innings. I guess he was on the White Sox, who were pretty low on starters in 2019. But yeah, not really much importance there. You had the Giants signing starting pitcher Drew Smyly to a 1-year, $4 million deal. He was awful this year for the Rangers. that's about it. I don't expect this move to turn out into anything because I just think Drew Smyly's going to be a below average pitcher and then he's going to get injured. You also have and this is probably the most interesting out of the smaller moves I'm talking about, but you have the Athletics acquiring second baseman / outfielder Tony Kemp from the Cubs for, let me get his name here, excuse me for a second, Alfonso Rivas. Alfonso Rivas does not rank in the top 30 Cubs prospect system, so I don't expect that to be kind of a big thing at all. But yeah, Tony Kemp, he's intriguing. He's not a good hitter at all. I mean, he had like a 285 xWOBA. And I can kind of get into those stats more. But he hit 212 for a 291 on base percentage, 380 slugging percentage, which adds up to a 671 OPS. He hit 8 home runs. One of those were a fluke, by the way. If you know, you know. 29 RBIs. He had I said 285 xWOBA, but he actually had a 285 normal WOBA and a 262 xWOBA. So yeah, not good at all. A 77 WRC plus, which means he was 23% below league average. The only thing about him is that he's a pretty good defender at both second base and outfield. If you need and he's also pretty fast. So he's kind of just a pinch runner / pinch. He's just a pinch guy. You can pinch run for him. You can pinch hit for him. You can, in the ninth inning, if you need defense, you can put him at second or in the outfield. And that's kind of an athletic sort of guy. He can play everywhere. He's not a good hitter, but he'll be on that bench for that athletics team. Now, I don't have much time left, but we're going to talk about 2 rumors, and then we'll talk about a few little things, and then we'll be out of here. So first off, the first rumor I want to talk about is the Reds are reportedly interested in Dodgers shortstop Corey Seager. So I don't expect this to turn out into anything at all. That's kind of obvious. You would be hearing a lot more about a Corey Seager rumors if anyone actually thought a Corey Seager trade was going to come down. But Corey Seager, I think people kind of forgot about him. You know, you kind of think of him as an injury-prone guy, and he definitely is. But this year, he was good. He had a 272 batting average, a 335 on base, a 483 slugging percentage for an 818 OPS. He hit 19 home runs and 87 RBIs. And for the advanced statistics, he had a 113 WRC plus, which means he was 13% above league average. He had a 340 WOBA and a 332 xWOBA, so basically correlates there. And then he had a 5 outs above average, which again is the new baseball savant statistic that is kind of meant to rate your overall defensive capabilities. He had a 9 defensive runs saved and a negative 1.5 ultimate zone rating, so a good offensive or defensive season for Seager, and he had a 3.3 WAR. So I think Seager definitely had a solid season this year. I don't think the Dodgers will trade him for 2 reasons. One, if they wanted to trade him, his trade value is definitely not at an all-time high. They would probably be waiting for him to put together like a 5-4 season before they wanted to trade him. And plus, I could definitely see this being more focused at the trade deadline, because I do think the Dodgers are going to go all out to trade Francis for. Man, I got caught up in my words, my bad. To trade for Francisco Lindor at the trade deadline, I think they'll definitely try to do that. Just because there were so many rumors about the Dodgers trying to go after Francisco Lindor this offseason, and they did die down, especially since the Indians GM came out and said that they expect Francisco Lindor to be on their roster. But that would definitely be it would be like a Manny Machado type trade they made in the 2018 trade deadline. I could definitely see them doing that, especially since this would be different from the Manny Machado trade, because they would be getting him for more than half a year. They would be getting him for a year and a half, except they would probably have to give up more. But the Indians would be less inclined to be able to ask for a Gavin Lux or Dustin May type prospect with that much less service time available until free agency. We also, and this makes me very happy, the Braves missed out on Josh Donaldson, obviously. So, according to the reports, the Braves are reportedly going to revisit the Kris Bryant trade talks they were having with the Chicago Cubs. So, I don't think this is going to happen. I can hope as much as I want that the Cubs are going to trade Kris Bryant and finish 4th place in that National League Central, but I really don't think they're stupid enough. But if the Braves get that desperate, and again, I don't think they will because they've had a big offseason. Their payroll's already pretty high, so it's not like they could definitely finish this offseason, and the fans shouldn't be able to complain. But the thing with the Braves is they have a lot of pitchers who could intrigue the Cubs. They have Bryce Wilson, or for some like mid-tier arms, they have Huascar Ynoa, Kyle Muller, Bryce Wilson, and then for those top-notch arms, you got Kyle Wright, who's the number... Kyle Wright's not ranked at... Oh, yeah, number 35. Kyle Wright, the number 35 prospect in baseball, and then Ian Anderson, the number 31 prospect in baseball. Both of those guys are righties. And then you also have a guy like Shea Langeliers, who the Braves could trade maybe for Wilson Contreras. So the Cubs are getting a top catching prospect, and Langeliers is the number 63 prospect in baseball. But the Cubs aren't going to get Drew Waters or Christian Pache, but yeah, I think they could definitely try to trade one of those top arms. They have a lot of guys who are a lot of arms who are highly ranked in that prospect system, and they should definitely be able to get some leverage there on the Cubs, saying, "Hey, if you're not accepting this, you're stupid." Though I think the Braves would actually be stupid to expect the Cubs to do that. So a few small things before I head out. First up, the Yankees will bring in CC Sabathia as a special advisor, is how they described it, to their organization. They've done this with a lot of their former players. They did it with Carlos Beltran before he was hired by the Mets. And current special advisors include Andy Pettitte, Alex Rodriguez, Nick Swisher, Hideki Matsui, and Reggie Jackson. So a lot of big Yankees guys right there. And CC Sabathia is going to join them. I think this is just a great... This is such a great thing the Yankees have done. They've created a stable of Yankees legends that just help these young Yankees players, because the report says the role CC Sabathia is taking is expected to encompass speaking with players at all levels of the system. So not only is CC Sabathia going to be talking with those with the major league players, but he's going to be talking with the AAA and the AA and the single A, all those guys. I think this is just a great thing the Yankees have done with their organization. And the other thing, I'm not going to talk into this too much, but I forgot to mention the arbitration figures. So a few records were breaking for arbitration. First off, Cody Bellinger broke Kris Bryant's like 10.8 or something, $10.8 million first year arbitration record. He got a little over $11 million. So nothing big there besides the fact that Cody Bellinger is going to make a boatload of money once he hits free agency in a few years. And then you also had Mookie Betts breaking Nolan Arenado's $26 million figure, as Mookie Betts now holds the all-time arbitration record for $27 million. That's how much he's going to make as an arbitration-eligible player in 2020. And another notable thing is the Astros came to an arbitration agreement with George Springer. So they were originally going to go to court. George Springer asked for $23 million, I believe, and the Astros countered with only $17 million. So there was a $5 or $6 million difference between them, but they've come to agreement in the middle. Springer's going to make $21 million, which is like 4th or 5th highest arbitration deal in history. So a pretty big deal for Springer right there. So that is it for the baseball news. A few things I want to mention for the podcast. If you didn't hear it in the middle, I am planning on uploading a podcast episode once every Tuesday and Friday. So twice a week. Also, I want to thank everyone for actually pretty good support on the first episode. As of right now, hopefully I'll get on Apple Podcasts soon, but I'm on Spotify, which is a lot of people are listening to me on that. And then also I'm on YouTube, but I'm also on this thing called Pocket Casts that I've never heard of. But yeah, I'm starting to get more widespread there. Combining YouTube and Spotify, I think I got about 60 or so listeners on the first episode, and I already got 10 subscribers on YouTube, which is solid for that YouTube channel only being about 24 hours old by the time it's probably not even that when I'm talking, but by the time you're listening to this, it'll be 24 hours old. But yeah, great start to the podcast, and I will see you all next Tuesday for episode 3 of Baseball Ramble. Thank you for listening.